Is Nagi gone from Blue Lock for good? Will Nagi come back to the story as a villain? And will he be participating in the U20 World Cup? Well, make sure to watch right to the end of the video to hear my thoughts on all of this. Alright, so as we all know, Nagi has been kicked out of Blue Lock, which came as a massive shock for most, as Nagi has consistently been a top 5 fan character. And I'll be honest, going into the U20 World Cup preparation without him feels a bit odd, which is why, as I previously mentioned, I will go over what I believe will happen with him. Let's start with the obvious question. Is Nagi out for good, or will he come back? Now for this, I'm quite conflicted, but let me explain. When chapter 302 came out, and we got to follow a regular day for Nagi, and how he later in the chapter realized just how much he misses Blue Lock, he even broke down thinking about how miserable he was, and was mad at himself that he couldn't just have tried a bit harder. Anyway, what I want to point out with all of this is that even though this was a brutal chapter, and the emotions were extremely heavy, I do think that if Nagi wasn't going to make a return, then this would have been the perfect send-off for him. As we pretty much have it all, we have him realizing how much he misses Blue Lock, but also coming to terms that he can't go back due to his lack of ambition. Like I said, after chapter 302, I was sold that he was out. However, when chapter 303 rolled around, everything changed. Because in the last panel of chapter 303, we could see Nagi, and there's nothing particularly important about this panel. Nagi is simply sitting at an arcade playing games looking miserable. However, if Nagi truly was done, then this panel would be stupid to put in, as it has no meaning. As they are continuing to show Nagi after his breakdown for no apparent reason, I strongly believe that he will come back. We have seen some amazing twists and turns in Blue Lock, which is why I strongly believe that a meaningless panel wouldn't run with the author. Which leads me to my next point. Will Nagi make his return in the U20 World Cup? Firstly, let's go over which possibilities there even are for that to happen. Firstly, what are the chances of him playing for Japan and Blue Lock? Well, they are extremely low, as Ego stated that outside of the selected 23 players, the other ones are just not needed in Blue Lock anymore. Now I do suspect that Sei is an exception to this rule, and that he will play for Japan, but that's a topic for another time. Also, I've seen a lot of people speculating about what would happen if one of the 23 players selected were to get injured or sick or something in that sense, like, for example, Chigiri breaking his leg, Yukimiya losing his vision, or, I don't know, Kiora just twisting his ankle or something random like that. Would Nagi then get the opportunity as he was placed 24th? Well, I don't think so, but let me explain. So there are 11 players playing in a regular football match, and then 7 players sitting on the bench. The players on the field and bench come out to 18 players. Now you may ask why Ego chose 23 players then. Well, that's what you normally do for national football events, just to be sure if someone gets sick or injured. Which means that there are already 5 players who could act and switch in if someone gets injured or sick. So there's absolutely no need for a 24th player, which is why I don't see Nagi playing for Japan. Hopefully, it isn't too confusing so far. Alright, it feels like I came onto a bit of a sidetrack, so let's get back. Now, what's the possibility for Nagi playing for another country? Well, I would say that it's actually higher than him playing for Japan for 2 simple reasons. Firstly, his parents travel a hell of a lot, and this is a stretch, but Nagi could have a double citizen in some country, like just for example, England. Now if you have a double citizenship, and if we just say that Nagi has one for England but also Japan, then he could choose which country he would like to represent in the World Cup, and he could very well choose England over Japan. However, this theory falls flat real quick, as firstly the whole double citizenship thing is a stretch, but then he must also be good enough to qualify for the other country's team. And since a lot of the countries are stronger than Blue Lock, and multiple countries have new generation World 11 players, I'm not even sure if Nagi would fit into the majority of the countries. Maybe he would fit into one of the lower level countries, but that's it. Does that mean that the whole playing for another country is over? Well, not really. The way I could see that theory still working is if Nagi has impressed a very influential man enough. Now I'm talking about Ray Dark, who, once again, is just a massive stretch, as we pretty much know nothing about that man, other than that he is the president of PIFA, and that he once helped Kaiser and got him into the bastard Munchen Academy. Now if Nagi has made himself interesting enough throughout the Neo-Egoist League, then maybe Ray Dark could pull some strings behind the scenes and get him back into the story by him playing for another country. Now personally, I don't hate this theory. I feel like it would be cool for Nagi to randomly pull up with some other country in the U20 World Cup, because that would leave the whole Blue Lock squad just in pure awe. Just imagine Isagi, Ryo, and everyone watching Nagi walk out with Germany. Like, that would be such a cool plot twist, and even when thinking about how insanely cool that would be, I feel like that won't happen, because I feel like that would be too soon. Like we saw Nagi in an arcade a total of 47 days before the U20 World Cup. And here he looks completely lifeless, and he looks tired, just with life. And you mean that he has less than 50 days to totally pull a switch and get out of his gloomy and depressing mood, to then make himself worthy of playing in another U20 squad outside of Japan? Now I love Nagi, and even though he said that he wanted back, there's no way that he has that much motivation to do all of that just to not even be able to play with his friends, but instead with some other randoms. So with that said, I do think that there's a chance for him to appear in the U20 World Cup, but then the author has to cook up some really good explanation for it, and honestly, I wouldn't hate it. However, I do feel like giving Nagi more time would be more beneficial to his character. However, that also goes both ways. Let's be honest, we can assume that the U20 World Cup will be a long arc, like the Neo Egoist League, which was like 150 chapters, and that was only 4 matches basically. Now, obviously, the length of each match in the U20 match will hopefully be decreased a bit. However, I still think that it's safe to assume that the U20 World Cup will be at least like 80 chapters, which is a real lowball. Anyway, what I want to get out of this is that the longer the people get to wait for Nagi's comeback, it can be a dangerous coin. On one of the hands, the longer you wait for something, the more you get excited about it and the more you build up hype about it. But at the same time, I feel like most people will start to forget about him when there's so much more happening, and not to mention that if the opposite happens and that his comeback is still extremely hyped up, then the hype for it will be massive, and often when that's the case, then the expectations will be massive, and most of the times, things doesn't live up to the hype. You know, for example, when you have been waiting months for a game to drop, like you are super excited about it and think about it lots. However, the more you wait, the more you subconsciously expected it to be perfect, and most of the times it just isn't, which could be said for Kunigami. We had a vague idea that he would come back, however, before we could see that we had the whole third selection and the U20 match, which left us expecting too much, and that made Kunigami's reintroduction all flat, and also a bunch of more things which I won't talk about today. Anyway, once again I feel like we got a bit sidetracked, so let's get back to the main man, Nagi. So then, what do I think will happen to Nagi, and will he end up becoming evil? What I believe will happen to Nagi is that he is going to continue to be this depressed guy under the whole U20 arc. He will watch his previous teammates play matches and try their hardest together. Meanwhile, he himself is just in his room spectating. However, when the U20 World Cup arc is over and the players get their final offers from the Neo Egoist League all sorted out, then I believe that he will have built up such a lust to get back into the game that he will jump at the opportunity as fast as he can. He will then train with that team, which I believe will most likely be Munchen City. However, it's difficult to say, as we don't know who they bid on. Here Nagi will train like a wild beast. He will have the memories of himself watching his teammates and the Blue Lock players competing in the U20 World Cup arc in the back of his mind the whole time, only being able to think about that and how much it hurt to not be with them, and then he will never not train enough any longer. Like he said that he wished that he hadn't in chapter 302. But what comes next? Well, I believe that Blue Lock will have some sort of club arc after that, and there he will get reintroduced. If, for example, Isagi and him are in the same league, or if they are in some sort of cup final against each other, here Nagi will show just what he has learned from his club, and how much he has improved. Or it might not be against Isagi that he would make his reintroduction against, but honestly, that doesn't really matter too much. Anyway, that's what I think would be the best opportunity for him to return. Now lastly, let's try and tackle how I believe he will be when he eventually comes back into the story. Now here, I'm not too sure at all. I would like for Nagi to take up this anti-hero or antagonist persona and become more like Kaiser in the beginning of the Neo Egoist League, like a rival, but not in the sense like a friendly rival as Bachira or Chigiri, but more like a cold-hearted one who wishes on Isagi's downfall. However, making Nagi more edgy, if you would like to call it that, could also have its downsides as they did that with Kunigami, but he fell a bit short in my opinion. However, I also just don't want Nagi to be like all and happy when he returns, because I don't think that he can be like that after suffering all of this time alone. Seeing his friends playing without him must have left him feeling so alone and sad, so him being this calm guy, which he is now, wouldn't really work if you ask me. I do feel like he will take back his regular personality when the real World Cup happens. However, when he first returns, I want him to be different, and I want to see that he's really changed. However, that's just what I think, and you might call me weird for that. But anyway, please let me know how you would like Nagi to come back, and also how you think that he will make his return, if you agree with something I said, or if you have your own theory. Anyway, if you like Blue Lock and videos like this, then I would highly suggest you subscribe to this channel, and while you are at it, leave a comment and a like, as it helps out with the algorithm a ton. And if you are curious to see another video of mine, then please watch the video that will be popping up on the screen now. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.